Welcome to today's video. Thanks for joining me. I want to continue the theme of working from home, but we're going to extend that today. What we're going to really focus really is on the more mental side. And it feels like this is very much a sort of day two, week two type topic around our situations where a lot of people around the world are kind of shut at home, self-isolating. And week one, if you like, really felt like, or the first couple of weeks really felt around, the focus was more on operationally, getting things running, getting your laptop set up, talking about your daily routine, etc. As it goes longer, it feels like it's becoming more of a mental challenge. So really what I wanted to focus on this video was really around mental health. Now, I'm very fortunate that a really good friend and ex-colleague of mine who I worked with previously at Goldman Sachs is now actually an expert in the area of natural health and mental health, and he's focused on this in particular. He's been putting out some excellent content around the topic of COVID and the mental health side of things. So what I did, I caught up with Dr. Karthik Ramanan, Dr. K, as he's known, and basically went through with him some of the key strategies that he's employing to kind of help us get through these times, what advice he'd give you, and also what he thought about some of the things that UiPath is implementing to help its employees. Let's take a listen.
Let's get into it. So Karthik, thank you for joining me on this section of this video. How about we start with you introducing yourself?
Sounds good. Well, I'm Dr. Karthik Ramanan. I'm a licensed naturopathic physician out of Phoenix, Arizona, in the United States. My specialty is integrative mental health and lifestyle medicine. I help ambitious individuals end self-criticism with tools and strategies to create optimal everyday mental health, really so that we can get out of our own way by silencing the voice in our head so that we can execute on the things that we care about and ultimately live a life of purpose.
Sounds great. And I think I came across one of your posts, which is why we're talking now, really, which was all around social distancing and how we can kind of deal with the challenges we have, but at the same time, keep a distance, but at the same time, keep close, and how maybe now is a time to be closer than ever. And I think you outlined kind of 5 key strategies. Do you want to start kind of taking us through some of your strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. Thankfully, we are in a period of human history where we have the ability to connect like this from, what is it, like 8 time zones away right now?
Yeah, like 8-hour difference. Yeah, other end of the
Right?
world, nearly. Yeah.
Yeah. And technology has allowed us to do so many things that we never would have been able to do before. I mean, even the fact that you and I connected, we can go back into our, how we know each other and that sort of thing from back in our previous careers.
Yeah.
But, even that, if you think about it,
Sure.
probably wouldn't have happened just 100 years prior, right? Or
Yeah.
even less than that, probably. So we have technology. Obviously, we're using that for working from home and that sort of thing. I think we take a lot of it for granted. So if we have a technology here, it's still only as good as how well we use it and the intention with which we use it. So one of the things that I've been advocating that people do is to use the technology to intentionally reach out to the people who help us feel greater, stimulate growth, inspire us, right? Those things, the people, the friends that you may not have reached out to in a while, but schedule a time and make a FaceTime call and reconnect with people, because there's actually people here, friends here that live within, let's say, half an hour of me, that when we meet up, we want to meet up like for lunch or dinner or something like that. But now we have the opportunity to connect. I connected with somebody just yesterday after about 3 or 4 years since I last talked to him. And it was an incredible, catching up, but also just sharing of ideas of things that we can now create and do together. It probably would not have happened if we didn't have this circumstance right now where we're all spending time, at home and contemplating what our next steps are going to be. And then because we have technology, we can reach out and connect to people that we know and meet people that we don't know. Also, part of it is using technology for quality time. So obviously, FaceTime calls, that sort of thing is good. But also, I mean, think about online gaming, right? This would be a great time to connect with friends over whatever games that you would like, that you enjoy playing, whether it's Fortnite, Call of Duty, or even Words with Friends, or whatever it is, right? Just something to engage with other people so that you can have conversations and shared experiences. But you can get creative with it. There's a lot of things that we can do if we allow technology to be used as a tool intentionally.
I totally agree with you. And I remembered watching it back, actually, why I really like that tip, because normally for the last few years, I've been involved in an exhibition that takes place in the UK every year in the summer. And one of the experts that comes along to this exhibition is based in the US. He's in the Rocky Mountains. And we kind of got into a routine that every year, as we're planning for it, I'd start to talk to him. And, then when we come up, he comes and stays over and he meets my family. And we've got like a routine that we've done for a few years. And because of the situation this year, we weren't
Right.
going to have that. And I actually realized I was missing that connection with him, because normally around this time of year, and I just messaged him. He's a really cool guy. And I said, why don't we catch up? And he straight away, like you said, he just called me straight away on a video call. And it was one of the best conversations I've had in a while. And it just it got us out of the headspace of the challenging situation we're in. We were able to talk about it, of course, but it just meant, a bit of time to connect. And like you said, he as well, Rocky Mountains is like, other side of the world for me. So it's amazing that we can just instantly have that connection, and we should kind of take advantage of it while we can, right?
Absolutely. And it's really the intention, right? Because we have the tools. If you don't use the tools, what's the point? Or if you're doing it with the intention of like, well, this is the best we can do.
Yeah.
But if you do it with like, how fortunate are we that we can all be in a situation where we're protecting ourselves and protecting other people by staying at home right now, and we can connect with people that maybe it's overdue.
Yeah.
Being able
And
to
you
connect
touched
with.
on something that I really liked. And I also like how in the video that I saw, you kind of repeated it twice. And I think it was necessary, because the first time you said it, it was kind of like, hang on a minute. Because what you asked the question was around, what do you now, given our challenging circumstances, we're self-isolating, we're stuck indoors. Sometimes we've got kids running around when we're used to, not having them during working hours. But you raised the question about, what does this situation allow you or enable you to do that you couldn't before?
Right.
And that's a really good way of looking at it. I mean, what kind of ideas did you come up with yourself when you thought about that question?
Yeah. So in terms of, I try to think about that every day. Well, maybe not every day, but pretty often. Um, Only because you have to look at what's possible in the current circumstances. We do, and I've been guilty of this for so long in my life as well. We try to control everything, and we want everything to be a certain way and according to the plan. And invariably, life never plays out that way, ever, right? We can plan and execute and get it to be close, but it never actually goes the way that we want it. So instead, what if we looked at, let's focus on what we can control, observe what's happening around us, and say, okay, what does this opportunity allow me to do that I would not have been able to do otherwise? And honestly, that thought actually came from some experiences that I've had with patients, where we just be talking about their symptoms, talking about what they're going through. I have really the most poignant one. I had a patient that I was called into at a clinic that I was at, and this patient had been dealing with a chronic Lyme infection for like 15 plus years, and she was only in her mid 30s, but this had been taking over her life for quite a duration of time. So I went to meet with her while she was getting an IV, and as we were talking, or I started to talk, and she basically told me her life story for half an hour, and I just listened for half an hour. I didn't say a word, and I just listened to everything that she had gone through, and lots of hardship. I mean, there's it's hard to really describe um, the difficulty that people who go through that experience. And I so I was continuing talking to her, and then I thought, okay, let's see what else is what else is in her life? And I asked her, do you have any kids? She said, and she just lit up. It was like a circuit breaker. She was in this mode of talking about her pain. And the moment I talked about her kids, she's like, yeah, I have these kids. They're beautiful. I'm just like, tell me about them. So they're amazing kids. They just don't take, they don't take crap from anybody. Like, they are just so independent and so strong, and they're so kind. And it's at such a young age. And I asked her, that's so wonderful. How did they turn out that way? Where'd they learn to be like that? And she just froze and sunk back in her chair a little bit. And because they've been watching their mother go through this. And they've been watching, they've learned how to be fighters and learned how to be compassionate because they've been watching me. And if you think about it, like, those lessons that those kids have learned through their mother, through this patient of mine, could they have gotten it elsewhere in that manner? Maybe, but probably not in that way, to that degree, to live and grow up with that for maybe their entire lives, right? And to learn those lessons. So does that make the neurological symptoms and everything else that she's going through any better? No. However, if it started to shift her focus to what has Lyme disease allowed her to be as a parent, as a mother to her children, that she might not have been able to do otherwise. Again, doesn't necessarily resolve the issue, but when we shift our focus to something else, we can at least find gratitude in what we do have. And I think right now, that's really something that we ought to start to focus on. Because think about it, if you have children, and 10 years from now, when they look back at 2020, what are they going to remember, right? I suspect they're probably going to remember the amount of time that they got to spend with their dad, right?
Sure.
And that sort of thing. And it's all in the perspective. Like, reality is actually a very subjective thing.
Yeah, and it's a good opportunity. You're right. It's an opportunity. It's challenging in the early days when we have them around, but you're right. I think they are getting more quality time. They'll probably remember not having to go to school as well for an extended period, but some of them are missing that, and some of them are kind of enjoying it as well. But no, I really liked how you put that sort of positive spin, or trying. It's not about being positive in a fake way, but it's trying to say, well, all right, I'm in this situation. It's not something I can control, but what I can control is how I react and respond. And trying to look for something positive just helps you mentally, doesn't it, in terms of getting through the day.
And I like what you said there about it's not about just being positive, because some people are like that. It's just positive for the sake of, and it's not really something I advocate, because pain is our greatest teacher. So if we just ignore pain and suffering, we're in a society that we try to avoid it at all costs. We're trying to make things more comfortable for ourselves all the time. And yet the things that make us grow and evolve are often the biggest hardships of our lives. So rather than just ignoring that and just being positive, how can you sit with difficult times and difficult emotions, maybe anxiety or depression, and acknowledge it, understand it for what it is, and see how maybe it can serve you so that you can process and then move forward. It's not about ignoring anything. It's I feel like it's a very practical and real way of really just addressing how to live our life on a day-to-day basis that gives us the best, again, everyday mental health.
Sounds good. Now, on terms of getting through the day to day, so at UiPath, we're a technology company. Some of us are quite used to working from home. Like, I've tended to, a lot of us sort of are remotely working anyway. But a real challenge has been that all our customers are self-isolating as well. So the natural breakups. I had no idea that actually traveling to and from a client is actual mental downtime that I'm missing when I'm not having that.
Right.
So we've tried to come up with some ways in which we can kind of stay connected as we're isolated, but keep busy, etc. And I shared earlier an article which listed out some of the things we're doing. I'd like to get your input on, some of the ideas we had. What are your thoughts on things around like, the group meditation and yoga classes and things?
It's fantastic. Fantastic. I mean, it's about shared experiences, right? Shared experiences using technology. We're in the greatest age of technology that we have ever had as a species. And to be able to have, I think you were talking about like virtual happy hours and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. Like, it's cool, Yeah. If you want to say, is it the same experience as being face to face and just being in the aura and the energy of one another? No, of course it's different, but there's also pluses to that too, whether it's commute time, travel time, that sort of thing. I think it's
Yeah.
really important to have intentional downtime as well. And this is something that I did not, I used to talk about it and whatnot, but I never used to really implement it myself until my body made me kind of
Yeah.
like shut down after medical school, actually a couple years after medical school, and say, okay, you got to focus on balancing here. So, and essentially like having intentional downtime, intentional reconnection time, intentional rest and digest time, so to speak, parasympathetic state is extremely important. And I think it really does still fit into that productivity type of lifestyle, that mindset, because you're still planning and being intentional about a certain block of time. And maybe you can still go with the flow about what that time what you do in that time and how that might evolve, so that you're not just rigidly like, okay, I'm going to meditate for 7 minutes starting at this. Like, it's not in that respect, but it's just saying, okay, you know what, this is time for me to either wind down, or this is time for me to connect with my colleagues when we're doing a group meditation. It's a very, very, especially right now, a very, very smart way to live, because we need our mental health to be at the peak shape that it's ever been, especially in times like this, so that we can, again, do what's best for ourselves and our families, because right now it's unprecedented times. And if we're living in either anxiety or overstress or depression as a result of being quarantined and things like that, it becomes that much harder to look ahead to the future and figure out, how can I keep my business afloat? How can I, make sure my family's still okay financially? Not to mention health-wise throughout all of this. How can I keep our immune system healthy so that if we come in contact with this, that we can give ourselves the best chance? All those
Yeah, no,
questions.
I really like what you're saying there, because I think also it's interesting how things move on as the weeks are progressing. So like, and it's funny, even my first video around working from home, it was all about the practical side. How do what laptop should you have? How should you connect it to your monitor? And as the weeks have gone by, it's interesting seeing how the pace of work has changed. So what we're seeing is week one was a kind of like a big disruption. What's going on? Not really sure. And then what's tended to happen was people found, because everyone's working remotely, they're more likely to be there when I message them or whatever. And naturally, like, we got to a stage where you're just constantly on Zoom calls. And
Yeah.
so one thing, and it was echoed by our management recently, and I think it's a great tip for our viewers as well, is to take time to disconnect and
Yeah.
not just constantly be on these calls, because that's, again, it's almost like a perfect storm in a way, that the kind of there's a real risk around people's mental health there, because you're taking away the personal touch, you're isolating them, you're also putting there's also the fear or anxiety around the illness itself,
Right.
and potentially emotionally challenging situations as well, and it's all being combined into one. So it can be like, it's quite challenging, isn't it, from multiple aspects?
Yeah, and like I like what you said about it. It's evolving.
Mm,
And the thing is, nobody knows the answers.
yeah, yeah,
Nobody knows what's this shared experience going to look like in 2 days. I mean, it changes so fast, right?
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it is so important to have intentional time to disconnect, and um, it's great to be that you're in an office culture where that is considered a good thing to do.
Sure, yeah.
You're very fortunate in that respect because, there are other companies and other office cultures where it's, a little bit more about FaceTime and that sort of thing. Not FaceTime as in on the phone, but like
I know what you mean. Spending time at your desk
just
and
being there, being
hours.
present, equals you're doing work. And I'm hopeful that, at least from a work standpoint, that maybe companies start to realize that, all right, we still need to have a physical presence in an office, but maybe people can come to work 4 days a week instead of 5, or 3 days a week instead of 4 or 5. And the other 2 days or 1 day they can work from home.
Yeah.
That gives them a little bit more flexibility. And if we rotate those days, we could have less office space, cost less money, right? And
less energy, save
maybe
the environment, save the planet. Yeah.
Yeah, and then but it also from a it shifts the office culture to less about FaceTime and more about you actually getting the work done, the projects done, and that sort of thing. Because I certainly remember when I used to work from home back in my days at Goldman Sachs. If I got a chance to work from home, I got like 4 days worth of work done in half a day, because there were no interruptions.
Fewer distractions
nobody
and things.
Calling you on the phone, nobody walking up to you at the office. Like, it was incredible how much more productive you could be when you could just kind of create that isolation there. Might be a little bit different right now because kids are home too and that sort of thing. But in any case, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how business changes as a result of all this.
I think you're right. You're right. I've got an older brother who's literally involved in getting laptops out to staff who are now having to work from home, and they're having to order in laptops, send them out to these people, and it's forcing a behavior. And people are going to think, actually, do you know what? I was able to get quite a lot of work done remotely, and maybe it's not as bad as I thought, or maybe it's more practical as an option than I thought. And I think you're right. They're going to invest in their home office setup, and it may well be with us to stay going forward. And I think that is a good thing.
Absolutely is.
Excellent. So, Karthik, in terms of just sort of summing up and summarizing as well, how would you kind of summarize it in terms of key takeaways for people in terms of listening to this around what they should be doing to kind of help them and protect their health at this time, mental health in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. So, right now, all we hear about is social distancing, right? I don't know if I really like the term, because I think we need to be more socially interconnected now than ever. It's more physical distancing. Physical distancing is what's going to keep us safe from the aerosolized droplets that could contain COVID-19, all those things, right? But social distancing should be physical distancing. So really right now, we're collectively going through this great unknown. Nobody knows. There's no playbook for this. There's no playbook for this in terms of health. There's no playbook for this in terms of if you have your own business, how to keep it afloat at this point. There's no playbook for this in terms of your finances, or maybe unemployment, or your 401k, all that stuff. All of it happening at the same time, working from home, kids can't go to school. Like, there's no playbook for any of this. So the only thing that we can do, I feel, again, focusing on what you can control. And to me, it's creating that mental headspace, that honestly mental toughness to be able to acknowledge what is happening, process it. And that processing can feel, very emotional, sad, crying, angry, whatever it might look like, but you process it. And then once that's over, you move forward. And actually, one of the things that I've come to learn now, as I've been talking to my audience members more, is just this understanding of how much fear and anxiety is going on right now that people are experiencing, because again, it's this great unknown. And I just made a video released yesterday on the Dr. K show about people's reactions to it. And it's just this fight, flight, or freeze. Either fighting, you're figuring out what to do, flight, which traditionally, if you're chased by a tiger, you're running. These days, it's, in the modern sense, more of the mental checkout. Let's just turn on Netflix and wait for this all to end, or bury your head in the sand and pretend it's going to be okay in 2 weeks. It's not. The world is going to change. Or freeze, where it's almost that sense of powerlessness that might have been, a result of childhood trauma that's just resulting in fatigue and just the inability to do anything, even though consciously you know that you want to be doing something. So to address that, I actually put together a free 1 hour live web class where I'm teaching people 5 strategies to end anxiety and fear around the coronavirus itself, but also the way that life has been disrupted, and how can we create that strong mental health so that we can, again, learn how to process and live our life to the fullest, and find those opportunities and find those moments where we can say, what does this allow me to do that I would not be able to do otherwise? So it's again, it's a free 1 hour web class, 5 strategies to end coronavirus anxiety. If anyone's interested, you can register at endcoronavirusanxiety.com, and I'm sure you can put a link to that somewhere here.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the video as well. But it's a class that I'm doing now once a week on a Friday. So hopefully you can make that time and I can see you there, and we'll do a bunch of Q&A and everything afterward. I'll stay as long as you want. And we'll all get through this together. We're only going to get through this together.
Great. Thank you so much for your time, Karthik. And yeah, I'll absolutely link that in the description. And yeah, I've had a chance to be part of that class and found it really beneficial as well. So thank you for doing that and putting yourself out there. And yeah, for those interested, I also recommend the fight or flight or freeze video as well. I found that quite interesting. So I'll link all of that in the description. But thank you so much for giving up your time and speaking to me.
Absolutely, Arif. Take care.
Thank you.
So that was Dr. K. Hopefully you found his input useful there. And also what I'll link below is the details around what UiPath is doing. You'll see a link to some of the techniques that we're employing internally to just help our people stay motivated, connected, and just help them with their mental well-being as well. Additionally, as mentioned, I'll put a link to Dr. K's videos as well, so you can see that if you want to get a bit more information around him. And yeah, hope to see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.